Well, we had a slight technical glitch. I'll try to pick it up about where I was. Because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to him. But when he asks, he must believe and not doubt, because he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That man should not think he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all he does. The brother in humble circumstances ought to take pride in his high position, but the one who is rich should take pride in his low position, because he will pass away like a wild flower. For the sun rises with some scorching heat and withers the plant. Its blossom fails, and its beauty is destroyed. In the same way, the rich man will fade away even while he goes about his business. Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, because when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. Blessed be the word of the Lord. We here in Wyoming and in Casper, and really all of us in the United States, are going through a time of great trial. This coronavirus caught us unprepared, unready, and we have not persevered very well. It brings to me memories of the early years of World War II. And really, we look at it and we think World War II started in 1941, but it didn't. World War II really started, you might say, in 1936. But if you were Winston Churchill and you were in a position of leadership in Great Britain during the 30s, you recognized that that war was coming as early as 1932 or 1933, when Hitler made his rise to power in Germany. Churchill wasn't fooled, and Churchill could see many years in advance what that threat would be, not only to Great Britain, but to all the free world. And really, starting as early as 1933, Churchill encouraged the British government to begin preparing, getting ready to withstand the onslaughts that he saw coming from Hitler. Hitler, in reality, feared England. Hitler had enough sense to know that Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Belgium, Holland, and even France were not really a threat to the army that he had prepared. But Hitler feared the British because, for one thing, they had a 20-mile waterway separating them from the continent of Europe, and it would mean an expedition across that water in order to invade England. The great fear in England, of course, was that finally Germany would invade, which never happened. However, in the early years of the war, from 1940 really until almost 1943, the bombing of Great Britain, and in particular London, was intense. Hardly a night went by that the Luftwaffe didn't drop bombs on London, and some of the precious old buildings in London were destroyed during that time. Churchill continued his assault on Hitler politically. No one wanted to listen to him. They just didn't think that it was possible that this war was coming. And then when it finally hit, fortunately, Churchill was elected into power and became the very cohesion of the English people. Churchill had prophesied about the war to come and the need to be ready and not to succumb to false promises by the Germans. If you will recall, Neville Chamberlain had been the prime minister before Winston Churchill, and Neville Chamberlain believed that he could reach a truce with the Germans. And he returned proudly from a meeting with Hitler in 1939 to announce that there was no longer a threat of war from Germany. And Churchill responded, "Don't you believe it? This will be an endless blitz, and nothing but our blood, sweat, and tears will allow us to persevere to the end." You may not sense it, but our current crisis is nearly as serious today. Anyone who thinks that the Chinese government is a friend of the United States is being misled. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe the Chinese people are genuine, industrious, and have as much hope for the future as we do. The Chinese communist government is a different matter. Communism is in direct opposition to Christianity. Make no mistake. This is a Christian nation, and those who over the last 30 years have tried to tell you that it isn't, that somehow George Washington and Thomas Jefferson really weren't Christians because they were deists, they have been fooled. I don't like to mix religion and politics, but sometimes you have to let your faith convictions lead you where they will. Unfortunately, we have not managed this crisis very well up to this point. The federal government, well, our federal government has let us down. Number one, because they really weren't prepared in any way, shape, or form for a crisis of this sort. No one could have anticipated it. That's what they say. No one, I'm getting a funny thing on the screen.
Oh, shoot. How long has that been on there?
Oh, just,
It's working.
yeah.
Hey, everybody.
Okay.
Keep going.
You see Dan's here and he's listening. In truth, no one really saw this coming. And we are hesitant to challenge the motivations of the Chinese government. But a couple of things you need to understand. This coronavirus in China has been limited to the city of Wuhan. Peking, Shanghai, all the other major cities in China, there's been no coronavirus there. The only place it's happened is in Wuhan. And interestingly enough, Wuhan also happens to be the home of the two major vaccine laboratories in China. Both of those laboratories have received significant funding from the United States government in years past. Now, you know as well as I do that there's something, how do we put it, something wrong in the mixture here. We need to alert ourselves. We need to learn as much as we can about the history of this virus and to do our best to change the direction that we've been going. You can't solve a problem like this by throwing money at it. And that's what our federal government has been trying to do, simply throwing a lot of money at the problem. Now, I will be glad to have that $1,200 in my checking account. I don't think I have much choice. I think it's already there. But frankly, I'm not only offended, I am insulted. I don't need it. Not that I'm wealthy, you know better than that. But it's unnecessary. There are lots of people in this country who could use it far better than I can. And I kind of suspect that many of you feel the same way. That, yeah, the $1,200 is nice to have, but do we really need it? Leadership must be led by experience. Our young people in the United States just don't have the experience yet. It is up to us, the elders of the community, the elders of the state, the elders of the nation, to with one voice say, let's get back to the basics, let's rearrange our thinking, and let's persevere through this. May God bless you richly and be with you. And thank you for being here this morning.
Amen. Thank you.
Well, I know, I got carried away.